You entered 517153. This means enter your.
All right, so we do have guests, so we should go ahead and get started. All right, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Partners Member Cafe. We're so glad you're here with us. So today we are gonna, well, let me start with my name. My name's Ann Gluff, and I am part of the member engagement team here at Partners. And I also have some of my team along with me. Beth Brooks is here, Maria Shannon, maybe if y'all just want to wave, Melissa Hatton, Lindsay Green, and Delton Russell. Shirley Moore is with us as well, and we are all part of the member engagement team. We also have a guest speaker, Mike Wall. I'm going to introduce him in just a minute. So if you, we're also offering closed caption for this session. And if it's there on your screen and you don't need it, you just hover over the live transcript and click hide the subtitle. You can move that out of your way. And so before we get started any further, let's go over just a few housekeeping items. So the meeting is being recorded, so you want to be sure, and when you're asking questions, not to share personal information. If you do have questions specifically about a family member or about yourself, you can connect with us later directly with member engagement, and we can give you one-to-one help. And we'll be sharing that phone number with you during our session today. So the recording of this session, we often get asked that question. We are recording it, and it will be posted on our external website for you to reference at a later time if you wish. And then during our session, if you have questions that come up, we really encourage you to use what's called the Q&A, which you can access at the bottom of your screen. You're going to be able to type a question into chat, or you can just hold your questions till the end, and we will definitely be taking time to answer your questions. You can also just use the raise your hand feature. You'll find that at the bottom of your screen as well. So if you raise your hand when it's question time, we'll be sure to unmute you and have you to ask your question out loud. All right, so today our subject for Member Cafe is focused on National Disabilities Employment Awareness Month, and we have with us today an expert from vocational rehab. His name is Mike Wall, and the North Carolina DHHS Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services has over 100 years of services. It remains confidential, private employment service office for people living with disabling conditions and related impediments for getting and keeping employment. So Mike has 30 years of both personal and professional lived recovery experience as a licensed behavioral health and addictions recovery specialist. So I am going to turn it over to Mike to share with you about vocational rehabilitation.
Thank you, guys. Can you hear me now?
We sure can.
Great. Okay, so am I supposed to share my screen or not?
No, sir, we are going to move the PowerPoint for you, the slide deck. So we'll go ahead and move to that first slide, and then you just let us know when you're ready to move on. Just say next slide.
Okay, so the presentation, the slide deck is less than 10 minutes, so it shouldn't be hard to get through that, and then we'll have time to discuss the content.
Great.
And I'm ready for the first slide. The first slide starts with the title, North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. We are also known as VR everywhere informally. Voc Rehab is used often to clarify and remind. And then DVRS, you'll see a lot in the technical writings and policies and procedures and inter-office memorandums for DHHS, DVRS. Our mission is to promote employment and independence for people with disabilities through customer partnership and community leadership. VR is the private confidential employment service office for people living with disabling conditions that result in impediments to employment. Next slide. October is National Disability Employment Awareness Month. We have it every year, and this year the theme is America's Recovery Powered by Inclusion. And that reflects the importance of ensuring that people with disabilities have full access to employment and community involvement during the national recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can see the poster there. Next slide. VR's history predates World War I, but the most significant in terms of legislation began in 1918 with the passage of the Soldiers Rehabilitation Act as World War I veterans started returning home. Then in 1973, the Rehabilitation Act was established so that the Rehabilitation Services Administration of the Federal Department of Education could oversee the use of federal funds to support states' efforts to provide rehab services. Then in 1990, the ADA eliminated all employment discrimination so that all citizens, not just federal employees or veterans, could get the same service as anyone else. Then in 1998, the Workforce Investment Act strengthened that access law by creating one-stop career centers across the whole nation. Here in North Carolina, we branded that system as JobLink. Many of you will remember the JobLink system. Then in 2014, WIA was expanded to Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, and they basically changed JobLink to NC Works. Next slide. A few resources in the slide deck. You should be receiving these slides in email so that you can use the links more conveniently. But basically, the U.S. Census Bureau there has detailed information about North Carolina disability characteristics, and you can see one sample there, 600,000 plus males and 700,000 plus females living with disabling conditions in North Carolina as of 2019. You can also see there in the graph the group long-term disability insurance claims tend to parallel disability determination services presentation for disabilities, long-term chronic disabilities, and the broadest category for those is mental disorders at 25%, then musculoskeletal behind that. And then another link there, free publication, Preparing the Workplace for Everyone, Accounting for the Needs of People with Disabilities. That's a really great free PDF resource online for helping people to make sure that they're able to be prepared to have the best kind of environment to support a workplace for people with disabilities. Next slide. So eligibility for vocational rehabilitation begins with a chronic disabling condition causing serious impediments to employment, requiring a program of services to work, and can benefit from the services in terms of getting and keeping a job. SSI and SSDI, disability receiving consumers, are automatically presumed eligible for our service because disability determination services is under Voc Rehab. We contract with the Social Security Administration to do their disability determination services for them. So it's basically us there doing that. We don't even have to have a signed consent for release of information for them. So all clients that go through Social Security to be on disability are automatically presumed eligible for VR. But clients do not have to be on disability. You can have clients who you are working with who seem to have barriers and difficulties to going to work that aren't easily explained or need to be worked with and clarified formally so that we can really identify what is actually an impairment versus what's just a barrier. And so any client that is having any kind of physical, mental, developmental, cognitive, emotional issue, even if they're not seeing a doctor yet and they're not diagnosed yet, would be appropriate to screen through Voc Rehab to see if they qualify for our services. Next slide. Okay, the Voc Rehab process begins with telephone screening. We screen everyone by phone due to federal regulations. There is a federal screening that is required to be done before you can get an appointment to come into our office. Our lobby is locked, and in order for you to get into the building, you must have a pre-screened appointment to be there. Then from there, you do the intake and application, then the eligibility decision process, then the individualized plan for employment, then the services, job search, development, placement, and retention monitoring. And then once you go to work, we have a case closure only happens after a minimum of 90 days of satisfactory independence on the job. And you can have one successful closure per year. Next slide. I can't see if the slides are advancing or not, so I'm just going to assume they are. Here's a sample of no-cost services, basically for most other human service providers, including assessments, counseling guidance, consultation and referral, rehab tech, engineering, job skills training, job search, development and placement, job coaching, very valuable service that we pay for, and employment follow-up and retention monitoring. I love that poster of Kate Madeline. These posters for ending this year are just wonderful. Next slide. The next slide should be sample of cost services based on income, and you should see Roy Cooper's proclamation for National Disability Employment Awareness Month for the state of North Carolina. Our cost services all must consider comparable benefits. We're not allowed to spend the public dollar until we have demonstrated on paper that we have used all comparable benefits that are available. For things like medical restoration, training, telecommunication, sensory, and other technological aids. Secondary services like tools, equipment, uniforms, licenses, transportation, those kinds of things, all come as a result of already having a plan in place for our core services for employment. Next slide. So another free resource there, you can see free e-learning modules. Those modules comprise things like serving individuals with disabilities, working across partners, and providing inclusive business services. And these modules also include a manager's toolkit to help facilitate learning these modules across an entire team. So it's a good resource. Next slide. All planning and services are to get and keep a job. Successful employment is the most important part of the VR program. VR ensures the job is going well and follow-up lasts for at least a year post-exit. So we only support full-time or part-time permanent employment. We don't support temporary seasonal positions. Another really good resource right there on that slide is the ADA update, a primer for small business. That came out when the ADA got updated around 2010, but it's still relevant for helping small business to be able to understand and comply with the ADA accessibility requirements. So that's a good little link right there for you. Referral sources are from everywhere, anytime, from everybody, including educators, health professionals, human service programs, employers, the judicial system, both federal, state, and local government, NC Works partners, and self and family and friends. Next slide. So referrals, I cover Surrey, Stokes, and Yadkin, and the deal is VR is generally 80% federally funded, and we're 20% state funded. So VR was originally set up as federal units. This means we have multiple counties covered by a single unit office with various satellite offices for our unit offices. And so our 72 offices statewide cover all 100 North Carolina counties. An example for us is Yadkin County is overlapped by both the Winston and the Lexington unit. So the Winston unit I'm the Mount Airy satellite office of the Winston unit, so we cover Yadkin County adults. But all school-aged people, all school-aged Yadkin citizens are covered through the Lexington unit through the Mocksville office. So you can see there that reference to Yadkin County schools. So all kids, all consumers 21 and under should go through their school or directly to VR. And there's a link for the office directory so that you can find the office that's closest to where you live. Maybe that'll be helpful. And then the next slide is questions. And there's the banner for the National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So can you guys hear me? Did it go okay? I was blind, I couldn't see anything. Any questions?
We do have one question in our Q&A feature. And I believe this is referring to one of the slides. It had the pie on it with all the separate pieces. This person is asking, does the 25% under mental disorder include individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and traumatic brain injury?
Okay, there's two issues there. Traumatic brain injury is a medical condition that's considered under physical conditions, and intellectual developmental disabilities are diagnosed through the standard DSM, and so those are considered mental disorders. So TBI is brain injury and IDD is a mental diagnosis. So I would assume that that includes IDD, but not TBI necessarily, because there is one sliver of that pie there that talks about neurological.
Okay. So then we have another question. Hang on one second. Okay, this one says, I'm hearing a lot about customized employment recently. Have you started using this model as well as traditional VR?
Yes, and it is traditional VR. The fact of the matter is our work and everything we do is documented to reflect the protection of and the provision of informed choice for the consumer. We have to be able to provide the services that allow a consumer to be able to make an informed decision. And informed decision making is actually the underpinning premise behind every single thing we do. So customized work plans are particularly facilitated by Voc Rehab because we are funded for that very purpose. We pay for that planning. We pay for the assessments needed to determine the need, to verify and confirm the severity and the seriousness of the impediments and the impairments themselves. So yes, we do a lot of, every single plan for employment is an individualized plan of employment based on the consumer's individual informed decision making. If they're not able to represent themselves such that they have a legal guardian, then we work with the legal guardian as well to make sure that we're all doing the best thing in the best interest of the consumer in terms of being able to get and keep a job. I would say there are different levels of job coaching, and so Voc Rehab is one level of those severe services. So when you come to Voc Rehab and you have supported employment, it's not the same thing as going through the Division of Mental Health or going through Partners to get Medicaid B3 supported employment. That's a little bit more intense. So there are different levels, and there's also private services. So just depends on qualifying for the public dollar.
Okay. So Mike, our next question, I think, is referring back to that pie with the percentages. It says, how does FASD relate? I believe that stands for fetal alcohol syndrome.
I have no clue. I would suggest that that would be considered a biomedical concern that would either fall within neurology or some other medical condition besides mental health. I don't think that that would automatically fall into the mental health pie slice.
Okay. I have a few more questions.
That's okay.
Okay, so the next one is, can a parent contact vocational rehabilitation since they have not heard anything from their daughter's school? So
Yes, absolutely. What you want to do is you want to find out from the school who is the vocational rehabilitation counselor, because many of the students will be on an individualized education plan, but not even have been referred to voc rehab yet. And so as long as you know who the VR counselor is, then you can determine how to contact and coordinate and communicate with that counselor directly, because they are responsible for the provision of the services.
all right, and I have a couple of people asking about the slides and if they'll be able to have access to the PowerPoint slides. And I would say the answer to that is yes. We are recording this session. And then Mike, you said you would share those with us?
I've already emailed them to Beth. Beth can distribute them out across the distribution list that she has. But what I would encourage anyone to do is to understand that if you are in Stokes, Surrey, or Yadkin counties, then contacting me is great and fine. But if you can't find who you were supposed to contact in your county, then I would suggest two things. The first is, if it's a student, go through the guidance office, go through the school. If it's not a student in a public school setting, they're a private school or they've quit school or they're an adult, then I would suggest that you still use my contact there on the very last slide and the last two slides. There is a link to the nearest office in your area, and you can ask. When you call, you can say, I would like to know who is the vocational rehabilitation counselor for this school, because they're all assigned a counselor. And once you get that information, then getting their phone number and their email is easy, and you can, squeaky wheel gets the grease.
Okay, so next question is, how long does the evaluation process take before you can start working?
That depends on the individual and their informed choice. It varies. We have a particular service called individual placement support. And if the person, it's for people with the most severe mental illness or heavy addiction issues. And so if they have those diagnoses, they are probably already connected with psychiatry services, which means when they come to us from our provider for that service, they already have psychiatry in place. They already have everything in place. And so it doesn't take us, 24 hours to get that information in and put it in the system and get them authorized for payment for that service. So it could be as little as 24 hours and as long as 6 months if that person doesn't even know they have a disability, they don't know the severity of the disability, they don't have representation, they're not stable enough to be able to make that decision yet. So it is individualized, and each and every single counselor in our system can easily be held accountable for communicating about where you're at in that process and what step you're at and how long it will take.
Okay, we have a few more coming in, Mike. So this next one is, can you speak more about the relationship between VR and supported employment? Particularly, how do our services differ from each other? And how do we work together ideally?
Okay, so it's based on the funding sources. If you are private pay and you're paying for supported employment through a private provider, like through an insurance claim for compensation for being hurt on the job or that kind of thing, that's a different ballpark. But if you are depending on the public funding, there's two sources of funding, and they're both from the Department of Health and Human Services. Those sources are two divisions, the Division of Mental Health and the Division of Voc Rehab. So the Division of Voc Rehab is basically the broad, big category for most severely disabled people to have supported employment services. But if you need more one-on-one and longer one-on-one supports, more than a couple times a month for the whole life of the job, if you're going to have more intensive one-on-one assistance, then that usually goes through the Division of Mental Health for the B3 supported employment services. Now, the way we can work together better, vocational rehabilitation is set up with community provider specialists, community education specialists who come in periodically and review and oversee all of the services. And so if there are concerns about cooperation or collaboration, effectiveness of services, or attention to the individual informed choice of the consumer, those are automatically reviewed on a regular, constant basis. Everything we do is designed to demonstrate adherence to best practice, to be recovery-based, trauma-informed, and sensitive to the respect for people living with disabling conditions. I noticed I noticed you said individuals with disabling conditions. Is it improper to say individuals with disabilities? And it is not. Vocational rehabilitation, stop using mental retardation language for individuals with disabling intellectual developmental disabilities just in the last 3 years when it came down federally. But we still use the medical terms of impairments and disabilities and impediments caused by those impairments. It's kind of sensitive to use that language because we are all heightened about, being respectful of the population with our language. So saying individuals with is the best way to go. It's the safest way to go because you're doing people first language instead of putting the focus on the disability itself. Saying disabling conditions versus disabilities is just a little more nuanced, that we're talking about them living with instead of living as. Any more questions?
I think I have one more here for you. Will VR help develop a business plan for someone receiving your services? If they are not enrolled with VR, where do you suggest getting help developing one?
Business planning for persons living with disabling conditions begins with the state community college system. The WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, provides 4 mandated partners for the dissemination of the services from the federal government. Those 4 partners include Voc Rehab, Social Services, the Department of Commerce Employment Services, the Public Employment Office, and community colleges. Community colleges are a mandated partner for WIOA, and the community college system has one of the best and strongest small business centers system in the nation. So to be able to go there to explore, how do I write a business plan? How do I determine if it's reasonable and acceptable for me to have a small business of my own? Starting with the community college's Small Business Center is a great resource. It's like going to the public library, and you have every right to do that. If you are serious about earning income and you're going to do that in the sense of employment, coming to the vocational rehabilitation as your private, confidential employment office makes perfect sense. And we have a very strong and a very well-developed small business and self-employment policy that includes being able to go through all the steps to determine, is that a good informed choice? I often have people come in who want to be a weather person on the TV telling the weather. And then it's not my job to tell them they can't be a weatherman. It's my job to help them discover how reading below a 5th grade level makes your choices different from just being able to jump in there and get in front of the camera and tell the weather. So being able to understand the information and have people you trust to help you decide and figure out what to do in your own best interest, all across the board, not just from one dynamic, is what vocational rehabilitation actually specializes in doing.
All right, and the last question I see is there a wait list for VR services?
There's no wait list. We do have provision in place for what we call selective services. If we ever have to serve the most severely disabled first before we serve less severely disabled folk, we would put that in place, but it's never happened in my 15 years with the agency so far. You know, you may be at the mercy of availability for appointments, but having to wait for 2 weeks for records to come in over the fax, or 6 weeks because the place that's sending the records will not cooperate, can be easily explained as you go through step by step so that you understand why you're waiting and what you're waiting for. So yes, there are no waiting lists, but there is waiting depending on what your circumstances are. I also see there that someone said, what do you do if people aren't severe enough for B3 but need more than VR can offer? I would suggest that there is either VR or B3. And so if they qualify for B3 and they need B3, VR will make that recommendation. But VR can accommodate people who could actually benefit better from B3 while we're waiting, because B3 has such a long waiting list. People wait 3 years for a spot on B3. And in that case, VR is limited. But then if it is a question of the consumer needing to be engaged in services for their own wellness, for their recovery, not just work, but anything, then there are other vocational related things like vocational training. And vocational preparation is built into our mental health system by the Division of Mental Health for PSR, psychosocial rehabilitation. That definition has pre-vocational training automatically integrated into it. And that's not the only one, that's just one example. A question by Ms. Austin. Austin had a question. Was it answered?
That was about the language, you mentioned first person language.
Gotcha. So the deal is you should use VR as a tool. We are the confidential private employment office. When you come to our employment office, we're not going to set you down in front of a computer and tell you to start looking for jobs. We're going to help you figure out and do in writing a plan of what it's going to take for you to be successful, not only getting a job, but keeping a job. So we follow you for 90 days of independent work, and then after 90 days, we follow you for a year to make sure that that's working. And if it isn't, you come back to us. You can have one successful closure per year for the rest of your working life. The limitations of income earning for SSI and SSDI disability benefits is individual case by case. In general, we try to tell everyone, if you want to work and you're drawing disability benefits, Voc Rehab is the place to come to get that question answered for you specifically. We have benefits counselors who specialize in helping make sure that no stone is unturned about what you can and can't do. When you go to the Social Security office, they will give you the generalized across the board answer of, oh, you can make up to $1,300 a month. But they don't tell you about the details for your situation, since you are receiving food stamps, housing subsidy, insurance subsidy, all kinds of other things that they don't take into account that would be disrupted by that $1,300. So your best bet for determining how will work impact my benefits is to come to vocational rehabilitation, ask to apply for services, and get that question answered.
Mhm. That's a great question. So that last one there
Yes,
is
it was.
why does VR contract out job coaching to a third party when an individual gets a new job?
Yeah, that's a good question. Vocational rehabilitation is a division of the Department of Health and Human Services. We're a division of government. We are not the service provider for those job coaching services. We used to have the job coaches in-house. Goodwill used to have an office in our office, and another agency had a person in our office. But we found that it was better for quality of services and quality assurance to negotiate and farm out the funding for those services to private providers who could serve more people and more bang for the buck. So we do pay. It's just like the Division of Mental Health works with partners to pay the providers out in the community to provide services. It's the same thing. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, you actually got a thank you for that answer. That will provide a lot of confidence in making these referrals. So, okay, so there's another question that came in on the Q&A. What is VR doing to increase employer relationships? For example, other choices than besides retail, fast food, et cetera, to create more opportunities for employment?
Well, I can tell you that I have 3 cases right now that are working on their master's degree in law. I have 2 people who are working on their master's degree in illustration for computer animation design. We work across the board for an individualized plan that meets your individual needs. And so the sky is the limit. However, if you've never worked, or if you have a weak or poor work history with no supporting resources, if you don't have adequate housing, adequate transportation, adequate supports for being able to deal with things like childcare and food insecurity, then reality is reality. We're still the employment office, and those places need employees as well. So we wouldn't want you to be underemployed without it being an informed choice. But for instance, I have a person who is in school to get her law degree who is currently working at Instacart to order the groceries and go deliver the groceries. And she is on count for successful closure of her case with vocational rehabilitation for that job, even though she's on a career path to become a lawyer. We aren't paying for the tuition because she qualified for financial aid. And so once we close her out for Instacart, if she needs us again for another job, or if she needs us again to develop the lawyer placement since she's graduated school, we're right there for her for the rest of your working life. We're a tool for you to use. People don't work, you work people. Programs don't work, you work programs. I hope that helped.
So Reggie McNeil says that is outstanding.
Very good. Any more questions?
I don't see any more questions. So any more questions for Mike?
I would just make the closing statement that it works if you work it, and our policy and procedures are on the web. They're easily accessible. Your experience with an individual or an individual team or an individual system in your town might not reflect the same kind of openness and candid, transparent communications. If that's the case, you take it up a step. Or you make trouble. You call Mike Wall, and I'll be glad to consult.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your expertise and your knowledge about vocational rehabilitation. Great information. So for the remain, we have about 15 minutes left. I do have some additional information just about Partners Health Management and how you can contact us if you are in need of support or someone in your family is. So we can throw that slide deck back up, Beth, and we'll go through that pretty rapidly to see if I can hit the highlights. You may or may not be familiar with Partners Health Management. So we're an insurance plan, and we manage providers across our area that support individuals in the arena of mental health, substance use disorder, and IDD, as well as traumatic brain injury. And so we're one of the MCOs, managed care organizations across the state. So, you know, think of us as part government agency and part insurance agency. So we're really here to manage Medicaid dollars. We are recognized across North Carolina for our community model. And we do have a 24-hour, 7 days a week crisis call center for behavioral health, access to care. Melissa popped that number right in the chat for you. It is 1-888-235-HOPE or 4673. And again, that is available 24/7 and is answered by qualified professionals and triaged by clinical staff. So next slide, Beth. We do support many counties. When we add Davie and Forsyth, our newest counties, on November 1st, we'll be at a total of 14 counties. And so if you have questions for us, you can especially about the county change, you can send the questions to countyquestion@partnersbhm.org. Or you can call our county realignment phone number at 1-833-589-2184. And then you can also go to welcometopartners.com for the most up-to-date information. So this we'll go through real quick. We have been doing Welcome to Partners events for these new counties. We actually do have a session this evening regarding mental health and substance use disorder services. It's an overview. Anyone is welcome to attend. And Melissa just popped a registration link in the chat. So if you wish to join us tonight, just go ahead and click on that link. So next slide. So member engagement. That's us. We're hosting this event for you that we do each month. So who are we? We provide advocacy, support, help you navigate our service system. If you don't know, you need help, but you're not sure who to ask, call member engagement and we'll connect with you. You can call 704-884-2729. And you can also send any questions to memberquestions@partnersbhm.org. That's an email, and we're going to address your questions there as well. Just one quick note. If you do send a question into member questions, when you get an email back from Partners, it's going to look a little different. Our email has to be protected for HIPAA reasons, for all of that private healthcare information. So it's going to come through looking like what you see on the screen here. This is called a Zix mail from Zix Corp. It secures everything. So it'll look like this. You'll click on that, open the message, and then it's going to go ahead and flip the screen there. There you go. It's going to have you enter your email address and enter a password. And then once you do that, then you're all set for any emails that come from us. Just wanted to let you know that's what it's going to look like when it comes through. So on our website, we have member information available to you. In one corner of it, you'll see something called Member Connect, and Member Connect is our member portal. So if you're a member with us, you could register to receive updates and health information. You'll also see a list here of some member tabs. We're running short on time, so I'm not going to go through all of this, but I really encourage you to go to Partners website at partnersbhm.org and check out member education and the member portal to get information. Really click on that Welcome to Partners link all the way over to the right, and you're going to get great information on how to connect with us and just other important information about services. All right, so next slide. PICS Health mobile app. That is a self-management app that we now have. It focuses on how you're feeling that day, focuses on loneliness. There's some assessments that you can take that are, confidential to you to see how you're doing. There's also a phone line that folks from PICS Health can connect with you if you wish and give you some support, and possibly then send those on to us at Partners Health Management to help you even further. Aunt Bertha is also part of our website. So this is where you can look for resources in your community, such as food banks, medical care, job training, etc. So it's super simple. You put your zip code in, and it's going to search your specific area and give you some resources to access. So who to call? If you have questions and you already are receiving services, your provider agency that you receive your services from, they're your first responder. So you want to go with them first. They're your first responder in a crisis. For other service help and crisis assistance, you can call our Access to Care line. I mentioned that earlier, that 24/7 number, 1-888-235-HOPE or 4673. If you have a care manager or a care coordinator, sometimes referenced that way, is assigned to you, they're your first line of contact. But if you're not in services, you have general questions, as I mentioned earlier, member engagement is the place to go. So just reach out to us by calling 704-884-2729, or you can email us at thatmemberquestions@partnersbhm.org. Medicaid transformation and transitions of care. That is a big topic. Lots going on in the Medicaid world today. So if you're someone that's transferred over to a standard plan and you need behavioral health services, you need therapy, psychiatrist, some type of service, your provider can work with you to help you come back over to Partners Behavioral Health. The member and the provider will discuss what services the member needs that are not covered by their current plan and work with you to get you to the place where you can access the services that you need. So who do you call if you have questions? You're in that health plan and you need to make that change. You call your enrollment broker if you're just enrolling in services. If you're already enrolled in that plan and you want to make a change, you're going to want to reach out to your health plan. If you have questions just about your health plan that's part of the standard plan, you can reach out to the North Carolina Medicaid Ombudsman Office. They are there for you, much like we are in member engagement, to field questions for you and support you, direct you, help you with, connect you to legal services, educate you, lots of different things they can do for you. So you can see the number there on the screen, 877-201-3750, or you can go to the website indicated there. And our providers also have a provider ombudsman, same thing. They're there for support and to answer questions. And there's both a phone number there and the email. Registry of Unmet Needs, too long to wait. So our Registry of Unmet Needs is focused on our Innovations waiver services for IDD. The average wait time is 9 years, but some have waited as much as 17. So the Too Long to Wait Action Team was developed by the North Carolina Waiver Action Team, was developed by a group in the Triad area. So they're really encouraging you to take a look at their website about Too Long to Wait. They are addressing our legislators about this. So let's switch gears here a little bit, and grievances. These are concerns or complaints that you have with Partners Health Management or a provider. Beth, you can go ahead and flip to the next slide. This is going to tell you how to file a grievance. You can do it by phone. You can mail something to Partners and Care of Grievances. You can email grievances@partnersbhm.org. Or you can go online and use our feedback form. Again, right to our website, partnersbhm.org. And this is /feedback to get to our feedback form. And any employee you talk to at Partners can help you with a grievance. We also have a human rights committee. Shirley is on with us, but I know she's having trouble with her internet today. So I'll just share with you that our Human Rights Committee, the HRC, works to ensure individual rights are being met. They meet on a regular basis, ensure procedures and plans do not violate human rights. And so for more information about the HRC, you can contact Keisha Sandage at 704-884-2698. Or there's her email address there, ksandage@partnersbhm.org. CFAC is our Consumer and Family Advisory Committee. It's a volunteer group made up of members and families that represent our individuals across our counties in the mental health arena, substance use, traumatic brain injury, and IDD services. So the Partners Consumer and Family Advisory Committee, CFAC, is looking for members. So for more information, you can contact Shirley Moore by phone at 704-884-2646 or by emailing her at smoore@partnersbhm.org. You can also find out more on our website at partnersbhm.org, Consumer Family Advisory Committee. So stay in touch with us. If you change location, be sure to call Partners and let us know. If you receive Medicaid currently and you do make that move, super important to reach out to your local Department of Social Services, DSS, to update your information. If you're receiving state funds and you make that move to another location, please do contact Partners at 1-888-235-HOPE. 4673, so we can stay connected with you and make sure that you're getting what you need. All right, so questions and comments. You can email memberquestions@partnersbhm.org, and there's our phone number. And it looks like we have some chat going on. It may be Melissa. Looks like she's popped all of those numbers and email addresses in there for you. So are there any questions in chat?
And there was a question about Zix mail and the expiring of the emails. So yes, they do expire in 30 days.
Okay. Anything else in there?
And then I think Melissa addressed the
Yeah, I see that. Okay. Yeah, I feel like I flew through that at rapid fire pace. So I was trying to get all that info in for you in those last 15 minutes. And again, I want to thank Mike Wall for joining us today and sharing all that great information about VR. Very, very, very helpful information. So, all right. So here we are right at 2 o'clock. So I want to thank you all for joining us. And anybody else have anything before we say have a nice day? Okay,
Have a
I think
nice
we're good.
day.
All right. So y'all
Thank
have a
you.
great afternoon, and thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.